Okay, so we've got our panoramic, and before I start laying stuff in, let's just double check and make sure I've got the right size for my ratio, because remember it's going to be a 3:1. So this is a 3:1. Now I've got some other files that I want to lay into this image, and I'm going to take, I'm going to take this one, and I want to put this into the water. So I can take the entire file and bring it into my other image. So select all, control copy, and paste. So now I've got this file, but before I start resizing things, because Amber was saying, okay, well, if I wanted to use a person, but then I wanted them to be like really small in the scene, would I need to photograph them really far away? No, you don't. You can actually resize the image in Photoshop. But this is going to be really important, okay? So as you guys are working, you need to work with smart objects. And it's really easy to just convert this to a smart object. So I'll talk about kind of why we would do that. Has anybody ever done any compositing in Photoshop? Okay, so have you ever taken a file and you made it really big, and then you're like, no, I think I'm going to use it smaller. So then you transform it, scale, and you make it smaller. And then you're like, oh, maybe it does look better big. So then you make it big again. What do you think that does to the file?
It's the same as smooth.
Right. So you're making it big and then small and then big and then small again. And it's taking all of the information and it's breaking that information down each time that you make one of those changes to it. So rather than just copy, paste, and transform, if we make this into a smart object, convert to smart object, this is going to allow us to make all those changes without it damaging the original file.
How did you get that?
So it's just going to be in, we're going to be working in that layers palette a lot now. So under layer, smart object, and then convert to smart object. So now I've got it as a smart object, and I'll show you, let me make my layers palette larger so you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm gonna go to my panel options, and to be totally honest, I like to have a much larger thumbnail in my panel, in my layers panel, so I can see what I'm doing. So I'm gonna choose this, the big thumbnail. And if you want to do this on your computer, and it will just kind of make it a default because I'm changing the options in this panel, all you have to do is go to this little thing in your layers palette that has lines. It's like a couple lines. That's going to allow you to get into your properties. Remember, we did that for our info palette to change the RGB or the CMYK down to K. So anytime you see this, right there in the properties, right there in the adjustments, right here in the layers panel, that's going to allow you to get to your panel options.
It's convenient. I'm always looking at like super tiny one. I'm like, I can't see what I just put there, but.
So you see the difference there in my thumbnails? It's going to be a lot easier to tell what's going on. And it may be hard for you to see, and if you can't see it, I want you to get up close to the screen. But do you see this where it looks like you've got the layer, and then there's a little thing in the corner that looks like a page with a corner folded down. That is denoting that this is a smart object. And I'm going to look at your files, your PSDs, your working files, to see that not only that you're working non-destructively with layers, that you're working with smart objects, that you're working with layer mask, and you should be naming these as you go, okay? I'm trying to teach you good work habits, workflow that you can use and will continue to serve you well throughout your your Photoshop career. So I'm going to go ahead and name this gold because that's my gold coins I want to lay in here. And I'm going to reposition this, and you can just use the letter V, and that's going to give you the move tool over here. And let's see, I'm going to lay it into the water. Right down there. And now I want to mask it out so that it looks like it's kind of in the water. So I can use a quick mask. So right here is, or add a layer mask, and now it gives me a second window in the layers palette, and this is my layer mask. Right now it's completely white, right? because white is going to reveal and black will conceal. So I want to paint this back into my image. And in order to do that, I'm just going to go to my properties. And remember, the properties is just whatever layer you're on, it's going to show you the properties panel. So if I were on a curves layer, it would show me that curves panel. But this is my properties for my mask. And I'm going to invert this, and you're just going to see the image completely disappear. Invert. Now the image has disappeared. Look what happened to my mask over here. It turned black because I inverted it. Now I just want to paint my image back in where I want it. So I'm going to use my brush. And the shortcut for brush, B, that's correct. B for brush. So I can see the size of my brush, and I'd like a much larger brush than that. What is the key command to change my brush size? Bracket keys. So I'm going to go with a larger brush. And you may want to change how hard or soft your brush is. So you could go up to your drop down panel here for your brush, and I can change my hardness, and maybe I want to have it 0% is going to be super, super soft. 100% is going to be just a really hard, super hard edge. So I'm going to have it, just somewhere in between. And of course you can change the size as well. And once you guys get further into this, you're going to have the option of tons and tons of brushes. Hell, you can even make your own brush, which is kind of cool. So I'm good with this, and I'm just going to paint it in. So I'm just painting my image back into the scene. And of course, whenever you guys are working on these files, you are going to zoom in. Oops, I painted too far. I went to my tree. Well, I got to start over now, right? No.
Control Z it.
Well, I could Control Z it, but I'm using
use the opposite.
So I'm using a layer mask. If black conceals and white reveals, all I need to do is change the color of my brush to conceal that part of my image. So this is going to be a key command that every single one of you is going to use, because you're going to be hitting this key command over and over and over and over again. It is, if I were to go to the tool panel over here, it would be swapping my foreground and background colors. My foreground and background colors are black and white. Black is going to hide and white is going to reveal. And when we swap these, it's going to either hide the image or show the image. So the key command for this, and it says, see this little tiny arrow here where it says switch foreground and background colors. The letter is X. Welcome to the letter X. Yeah, it is. Oh my goodness, it's really infiltrating everything I do. So we're just gonna hit X, and I can just get rid of it, right? And then I say, oh, you know what? I messed up. I need a little bit more here. You hit the letter X again. Oh, that brush is too hard. Okay, I can change my my brush. You guys get the idea. So this enables you to paint into your scene. And it's non-destructive. I can always go back and change it if I need to. And it's kind of hard, that's kind of harsh looking. So I'm probably just gonna change the opacity here. Change the opacity on it. And if I wanted to create this across the entire, across all the water, I can just take this layer and I can copy it, and then I can move it over, and I can do it again. So copy it, paste it, move it over. You guys get the idea. And then I can make adjustments to it, erasing parts of the image, which I'll do now. But make sure that whenever you start erasing something, that you're in your mask. Now, see how this little outline on my layers panel has this highlighted? It has the image highlighted, it doesn't have the mask highlighted. So I'm gonna hit B for brush, and it's saying, no way, Jose, I'm not gonna let you do anything because you're not on the mask. That's because this is a smart object. If it wasn't a smart object, then it would let me erase part of my image. We don't want to do that, or paint on part of my image.
So you created the other layers, you don't have to change those to smart images anymore?
Nope, because I copied the smart object, so it just said, okay, you want another smart object with a layer mask? Cool. And so this is where I would, you know, go in with my, all right, I'm here, I'm on my brush, I'm just gonna do, I'm gonna make it kind of quick and dirty. Like I'm not trying to give you guys perfection here, sorry. And then if you're, you know, if something's not happening, it's probably because you're on the wrong layer. So we're now on the right layer, okay, and we can change the opacity of these, which right now they're all set to kind of the same opacity. There. And you can also change the blend mode. So this is a way of, you know, combining images in, but you may decide that you don't quite like the way that it looks. I'm going to bring the opacity for these back. I'm going to bring the opacity back up to 100 on all of these, or you know what? I'll just leave it on one of them. So that's the opacity at 100%, and it looks really hard, but you can change the way that it is blended into the background by going into your layers palette right here where it says normal. That's the default. But then we could say, what does dissolve do? Dissolve does exactly what you'd think it would do. It actually kind of creates these weird little like dots, kind of dissolve dots. What about darken? Well, it's gonna make it darker, but it's gonna kind of blend within that background. Multiply. And to be totally honest, like I always have to look through all of these to see which one works better, because it's just going to depend on the two images that you're using. Screen kind of works nicely. It's lower opacity, but it and cycle through all these. Overlay is not a bad one, and you can use any of these blend modes and change the opacity as well. So it gives you a ton of options: hard light, vivid light. And I can give you a handout that tells you like technically what all of these do. But to be totally honest, it's not gonna be until you look at it in your scene for you to be able to decide whether it's something that is working or not working. I'm just gonna go with overlay, and I'm gonna reduce the opacity of it. So now I can see through the back of it, but I can still see the kind of gold coin effect.
So like, so overlay still shows the water and the stones?
Yep. Yeah, so it does a good job of kind of blending the two of them together.
So how would you get rid of, for instance, like, I've had that problem where it's like, oh, I like this thing, but the photograph's like, it's a small area, so when I bring it into a larger area, you have to do the copy and paste thing. But then when you have the edges together, like.
Oh, I was just thinking that.
That hard edge?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got that hard edge, and we want to get rid of this really ugly edge on it.
Yeah,
It's like a
more
seam.
seamless.
Yeah.
Okay, so in this case, we're going to go with a smaller brush, and we're going to change the opacity of our brush. You can change the opacity or the flow of your brush, and the key command here, you just hit the numbers. So right now it's at 100% for the opacity. If I hit 5, actually I think if I hit the number 3, it changes it to 30. If I hit the number 7, it changes it to 70. And again, being in the mask, okay, I'm gonna hit X, and now I can make that a much softer transition.
So it doesn't matter which one of those two layer masks you're in?
Well, it's gotta be,
Okay.
yeah, you see that line right there,
Yeah.
and it didn't do anything to that seam. And that's because I've gotta be on this mask, bless you, to get this to go away. And I do need that hard edge to go away, so.
Okay.
And then you can change the opacity, you know, back
So you just
to,
dropped it back down.
yeah, to like, you know, 30%. And okay, change it to X so that you can get it to blend better. And this isn't blending well because this one over here is the overlay at a certain or certain opacity, and this one over here is at 100%. So let's see, if I change this one to overlay and I keep the same So now it's more seamless.
I love the overlay.
So yeah, that would be, and I can do the same thing over here. I'll change that one to overlay and the opacity down. So now you guys are kind of seeing how that works. So I've blended something into the scene, which, okay, I haven't really, I mean, I've composited something in there, but what about taking an object where I want like it to look like it's actually in the scene? Here's my moon. So this is going to be pretty easy to cut out, right?
Yeah.
I could potentially use just the elliptical marquee tool to cut it out. But that might give me kind of a hard edge, right? Maybe I want to have something a little bit smoother than this. So instead of using a hard edge like the elliptical marquee, I'm going to select and mask. And you're going to see this option, this select and mask option, anytime you're on a tool that does selections. So for instance, the marquee tool or the polygonal lasso tool or the quick selection tool, all of those are going to be different ways to select.
You ever use color range?
Yeah, and you can do that in the select and mask. So I think that they've added color range into select and mask. But if I were to go off of one of those selection tools, do you see how that select and mask box at the very top went away? It's not up here anymore. But as soon as I go to one of these 3 selection tools, I have the option to select and mask. So I'm going to click on select and mask, and you have a bunch of different view modes. I used this one a lot. This is onion skin, and it allows you to see it as a transparency. And you can change the transparency, but it depends on the image as to which one of these view modes is going to be the most useful to you. So right here under view mode, you can cycle through these, and this is the marching ants. So I can make a selection. You can see the selection I made with the marching ants, or overlay, or on black. So depending on your image and depending on what the foreground or the background looks like is going to depend on which one of these you might want to use. I was doing a lot of selecting on black whenever I was working on my show, so I really liked the onion skin. And you can use this is going to be your quick selection tool, and with this, I just clicked and it selected my moon, which is pretty cool. But you can use any of these. So let me see, I'll deselect. This right here is a refine edge brush, and this is going to give you really, really delicate selections. It's going to be for fine tuning something. Say you've got hair, or you've got something that's kind of feathery. This refine edge brush tool is going to get things that are a lot more delicate. This moon is pretty easy. It's like pretty much a circle. And then you've got, I think that's just back to your brush tool, which you can paint in or, paint out. The lasso tool, a little clunkier, but whatever gets the job done, whatever works for you. And then the hand is just gonna move stuff around and then zoom, you know what that is. So I'm gonna go with a quick select, and I'm just gonna bonk. So that gave me pretty easy selection. Now we can look at the edges. So the edge detection, you can change the radius of the edge detection, and that's just kind of using contrast to help you make the selection. You can use smart radius, which again, sometimes this works to give you like a cleaner selection, and with Photoshop's help. You've got global refinements like smooth, feather, contrast, and shift edge. So if you ever used any of the selection tools in Photoshop in previous versions, you're probably familiar with some of these. So feather is going to give you, rather than a super hard sharp edge, like a sharp hard edge brush, it's going to give you a feathered edge. So there's a much softer transition between the foreground and the background. Same thing with smooth. Instead of having something like, say it's kind of jagged, it's just going to smooth out that edge. Same thing with contrast. It's going to kind of select along the contrast edge. And shift edge is one where you can say, I like this selection, but it didn't quite go to the didn't select all of my image. So when I do Shift Edge, did you see that black line come up? So it's giving you a little bit more outside of your image, or if you need to come in a little bit, then it'll shift the edge to the inside of your selection. And you can output it to a number of different things. I can output this to a layer mask, a new layer, just a selection, a new layer with layer mask, an entirely new document. I'm just gonna go with the layer mask for now. We'll say okay, and now you can see that I've got my image and the background is masked out. So I can take this and I'm gonna just copy everything, and here's my panoramic. Oops, Control Z. Oops, all right. Okay, copy it and paste it. Ooh, but it didn't give me my, yeah, all right. Excuse me. All right, I'm just gonna take, I'm gonna take the whole thing. Just do this. My moon over here. Here's my pano, and this is actually, sheesh. I can take this layer and drag it over from one document into the next. And now I'm gonna use my move tool. And there's a moon up there, but it's not quite big enough. I want it bigger in my scene. I want it to look like those pictures I saw other people take. So I drug the moon in here, and before I start resizing this, what do I need to do?
Smart.
That's right. All my smart students,
Smart
object.
is like to keep you from doing dumb things, which I love.
But you've got to remember to make it a smart
Yeah,
object
right.
before you do dumb things. So now I've got my smart object, and now I
like
can.
doing dumb things.
So we can make it larger in the scene, and
Now you use the color.
I don't know, it's kind of gold. I'm okay with it. Now, what if I want to have it look like where it's rising over the trees? Ooh, this makes it a little harder.
You put it up behind a certain layer on top of it, don't you change the layer order?
Yeah, so now I can say, okay, well, I need this to look like it's coming from behind the trees. So maybe I need to place it behind, oh geez, behind there. Well, I've got it here, but it's on top of it. I want to be able to see the trees through it.
Quick mask.
Here we go. So I'm going to use any one of my selection. I'm going to select any one of these, and then I'm going to go to select and mask. And now I can see the stuff through the moon, right? So now I just need to maybe use this brush. Okay. Now I need to, see, not shift, control. So it's right now it's in plus, so I just added to the selection, but I'm trying to take away from it. Okay. This isn't going to be super clean, but
Let's do it.
there. And maybe we'll use the overlay, black. Ah, went too far. So I'll select up here.
It's scary because it's laggy.
It is. That's what I've been noticing. Let's see what we've got here on my. And you can paint it back in, and that's where that refine edge brush is going to be helpful. You can just use the mask with your brush to get close to where you need to be. And I'm not gonna make this perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but you can get in close, and then to get that background info, you're gonna go back to that mask on your edge and kind of paint behind the trees. And they've made a lot of improvements in the selected mask, but I've also noticed that it's kind of made it slower too. We're gonna deal with that for right now. And what if I wanted to make a reflection in the water? Well, I can just take this and copy it. Wait. Copy it. And now I need to invert it. So we can do transform. And if I just move it down, then it wouldn't be a reflection, right? I need to actually take it and flip it. So I could go up to edit, transform, and then go to flip, I always forget, flip vertical?
Vertical, okay.
Okay. All right, flip vertical, and then move it down, and then make it part of the reflection in the water.
But it would have to be behind or underneath the island, because the island itself has to be filled too.
Ah, so then you could, ooh, now I'm moving my gold stuff.
See, this is where Photoshop just gets frustrating sometimes because everything's sort of moving.
I know.
Locking layers and then can't move it and just unlock it.
So yeah, then I could also add the island in to have the trees reflected in there as well, but then I would have to do that across the entire thing, so I'm not gonna do that right now. Let's just say that we've got that, but it looks like it's, you know, the opacity isn't working for me, so we can just bring the opacity down so it's just kind of a reflection. You guys are getting the idea. So you can use that selected mask, and there may be things that are harder to mask out. So for instance, I had this hand which I was going to throw into the scene, and it's whatever. I'm not saying that this is an ideal panoramic composite, but it's just some files that I had to work
You're like,
with.
what do I have on my computer that'll work for this?
Pretty much. So then you've got, you know, that, and again, the select and mask is going to be your friend, and you may need to use harder edges on some things and softer edges on other things. You can see that that's really, really rough. But again, it's going to make it a mask, so I can either paint it in or paint it out after I've got a rough selection, and work with it in that way. So, but that refined edge is going to help. Well, okay, that's not really working there, but smooth it out and change the radius. Just use whatever tools over here are going to work for you. Sometimes it's got to be the brush, and again, you can just moving really slow. You can change the opacity of or the hardness of your brush. Slow.
Do you think it's because of the video
The recording,
software?
it
Yeah.
may, that happens a lot too.
It's your RAM.
So then, yeah, changing the hardness of that brush back down is gonna help, so I don't have an incredibly. You guys get the idea.
Yeah.
So that this video doesn't get any longer, and changing outputting it to different things. I just want you guys to kind of play around with this, even if it's something that you're not necessarily going to be using in. Eileen's smiling at my failure. Even if it's not something that you're going to use in your image, you definitely want to practice cutting things out and laying them into the scene. But above all, make sure that you are working non-destructively by using the smart objects and by using layer mask. And make sure that your moon reflection, that you're labeling everything as well. I'll try to be a good model, good behavior by labeling my layers here. Okay, all right, so now I'm gonna stop this and let it save and then do vertical. The vertical one, yeah, okay.
Yeah.